Hi, welcome to my tutorial, Rainbow Tie-Dye Coasters. This is the first time I've ever attempted this. I was kind of just playing around, but I actually kind of loved what came out of it. These are the molds that I used. I bought them at Hobby Lobby. You can find them easily on their website or in stores. Assorted Coasters Resin Molds. And one of my absolute favorite resins, tumbler epoxy. This was actually made of note with tumbler epoxy, not Swift epoxy, which is the faster setting. It will work with that as well, but later on when we start talking about the timeline of putting in the colorants and swirling, this is regular tumbler epoxy. So I mixed the epoxy as per the instructions on the bottle, 1:1 ratio, and then I added in some of my favorite glitter. I love these iridescent opals. This particular one is called Bright from Peachy Olive Glitters, one of my favorite. So back to the mold. Oh, you can just see that wonderful rainbow iridescent effect. I love it. So I took the epoxy and filled the mold about halfway full. Later I plan on doing a decal maybe on top and fill it further. So halfway. Let's talk about colors. Alcohol inks. Just one is the Pinata brand. Doesn't matter what brands you use. They're all fairly similar. And then with my rainbow colors, I also added some pearl from Pinata as well on the and you'll see that when I start adding the colors, and it adds a nice iridescence as well. So I sped this up a little bit because I don't think you need to watch absolutely everything. But so I'm putting these in rainbow order. Important note, I'm adding these after I let the epoxy sit for 45 minutes. If you add alcohol inks right after you pour your epoxy, it certainly will work and probably be beautiful. However, the epoxy is still fairly fluid and liquid, and your colors blend together much more. I wanted somewhat of a difference that you could see my specific colors. I didn't want them all to blend together. I wanted them to keep their original colors. Another thing that alcohol inks tend to do in molds such as this is that they, as time goes by, they start to congregate kind of towards the center, and you can watch that in both of these. The center has some pretty distinct color margins, and then green and purple especially were the two kind of giving me the problem. They kind of came together and made black, which is okay. I thought it looked pretty beautiful, but something to think about. So you might have to go through as the alcohol inks are sitting before you're swirling and add a little more of the alcohol ink color to the very edges, to the periphery of your mold. Otherwise you're not going to have nearly as much color towards the outside, if that makes sense. Everything kind of migrates towards the center and you lose some of that pretty rainbow color around the edges, which it's okay if that's what you want it to look like, but just something to think about. Don't hesitate to add a few more drops as you're allowing this to move around. And that's just what we're going to do. So after we add this color, we're going to give it some more time to sit, move around a little bit before we actually do our swirl. As far as the hexagon one, that is the one that I added the glitter to, the Peachy Olive Glitter Bright. The heart one I did not. Again, this was just a first run trial. I wasn't sure if I was going to like it or not. I actually covered up a lot of the glitter with my alcohol inks and whatnot. I don't know that I would waste the glitter and put it in the epoxy first. I actually think I would put it in a back layer maybe and kind of just highlight it from the back. So we're putting our pearlescent Pinata pearl white in as well, and then we're going to let these sit for a little while. And this is what it looks like approximately 15 minutes after adding the inks. So we're letting that epoxy thicken more and more and more. So after we waited our 15 minutes, I am going to take it's actually a skewer for grilling food or a kebab, and not the pointy end. I'm using the blunt end. You don't want to use anything sharp inside your molds. They're so shallow, and you will scratch up your molds so easily, and you will see that in your finished product. So with something blunt like this, It's okay if you scratch the bottom a little bit or touch the bottom, I guess, but you don't want to scratch it or swipe it very hard or you are going to ruin your molds. But so I just started in the center, making spirals as I go out just to mix those colors, but not completely blend them. Something else that's pretty important, as soon as you are done with your spiral, don't let your kebab stick or whatever you're using to make the spiral, do not let your stick sit above your project for very long. Otherwise you'll get tiny little ribbons of dripping epoxy, and that tends to bring your eye away from what you're actually doing. So as soon as I'm done with this spiral, you will see I take that stick away immediately, and I have a little paper towel there just to wipe it off. That is really it. That's all this is about. So again, this mold is about halfway full. So after it dries, I give it a full, actually 2 days to dry. I probably don't need quite that much, but when you start adding alcohol inks to epoxy, it gives it, takes longer, excuse me, to really harden, and I wanted that. And then you can throw another layer, whether it's a domed layer or even while it's in the mold, you can add another layer of clear on top or a decal and then clear, whatever you'd like, and that'll thicken it up a little bit. So thank you so much for watching. I appreciate everything.